Welcome back again to the Fedric's Lens. There is a moment in the history of knowledge when something enormous becomes small enough to hold. That moment matters more than it first appears. Because there is a deep difference between a truth that exists somewhere out there and a truth you can carry with you. That is where this part of the story begins. By this point, the heavens have already passed through several transformations. They have been noticed as recurrence, trusted as order, disciplined through number and geometry, built into instruments, stabilized in diagrams, held by interpreters. But now something even stranger happens. Cosmic order becomes portable. That is not a minor improvement. That is a civilizational threshold. Because the sky is too large to hold, too distant to carry, too immense to consult like a personal possession. And yet, through the work of compression, relation, and form, human beings arrive at an object that lets them carry a working model of that order in the hand. That changes the relationship completely. A mural can teach. A fixed diagram can instruct. A temple ceiling can symbolize. But a portable instrument does something else. It travels with the user. It leaves the wall. It leaves the monument. It leaves the single site of instruction. It enters movement, repetition, consultation, and personal use. That is the difference portability creates. And portability is one of the great hidden powers of civilization. Because once knowledge becomes portable, it becomes more intimate, more repeatable, more deployable, more woven into the rhythms of life. This is one of the deepest reasons the ancient sky instrument matters so much. It is not only a device. It is one of the earliest examples of a human being carrying a usable model of a world order. That line is worth sitting with. A model of a world order. Not the whole universe, of course, but enough of its structure to orient, guide, and inform. That is extraordinary. Because for most of human life, reality presses in at scales larger than the body. The sky is above you. The seasons move around you. The world exceeds you. A portable model changes that dynamic. It does not make reality smaller in itself, but it makes part of its order available at human scale. And that matters because human beings trust what they can work with. Something distant can be admired. Something graspable can be lived through. That is where portability becomes philosophical. This is not just a technical upgrade. It is a transformation in intimacy. The user is no longer only a watcher under the heavens, no longer only a student of diagrams or recipient of inherited explanations. Now the user becomes someone who can carry a model of order. Consult it. Return to it. Use it repeatedly across changing conditions. That is a different kind of relationship to reality. More active, more personal, more procedural. This is why portability matters so much in the larger pattern. Because portable systems reduce existential distance. What was once overhead and untouchable begins to feel closer. Not fully possessed, not fully mastered, but available. That feeling is powerful. Human beings are deeply affected by the difference between something vast and something graspable. The vast can overwhelm. The graspable can orient. That is the hidden psychological force inside portable cosmology. It does not eliminate wonder. It domesticates enough of wonder to make it usable. That may be one of the deepest human moves of all. Take something too large to inhabit directly and bring enough of its structure into hand-scale relation. That is compression at its highest civilizational level. And compression is never trivial. A compressed model is not less important because it is smaller. Often it becomes more powerful because it can now travel through bodies, roots, decisions, and repeated action. That is what makes this object a threshold object. It is not simply a smaller version of something already understood. It changes the entire mode of access. Imagine the difference. A cosmic pattern painted somewhere can teach a community. A portable model can accompany a person. The first remains anchored to place. The second enters movement. The first requires return to the site. The second returns with the user. The first helps create shared orientation. The second begins to personalize orientation itself. That personalization matters. Because the more knowledge becomes attached to repeated individual use, the more it begins to feel like an extension of agency. The user is no longer only informed by a system. The user begins operating through it. That is one of the biggest hidden shifts in the whole series. Portability turns the observer into an operator. This does not mean total control. It means relation changes. The world is still larger than the user. But now the user has a surface through which some of that order can be engaged actively rather than passively. That is interface logic in one of its earliest strong forms. And once you see that, the ancient instrument starts looking even more familiar. Because the modern world is built everywhere on portable interfaces. Portable maps, portable screens, portable dashboards, portable weather models, portable systems of orientation and decision. The object here is ancient. The pattern is not. But before we rush too quickly toward the modern comparison, it is worth staying with the ancient threshold itself. Because this is not only about convenience. It is about scale. Civilization repeatedly advances by shrinking the gap between overwhelming reality and human action. That does not mean making reality fake. It means making part of it usable. The portable sky instrument is one of the clearest early examples of that process. The heavens remain immense, but their order becomes consultable. And once order becomes consultable in motion, consequences begin to follow. That is the next layer. Because portability is never the end of the story. Portable knowledge starts changing what people can do. How they move. How far they can go. How reliably they can orient themselves across unfamiliar conditions. This is where a portable model stops being only philosophically interesting and starts becoming practically transformative. But even before we get there, there is something else this object reveals. Portable systems feel trustworthy in a unique way. Not only because they are accurate enough to use, but because they accompany the user. They are present at the moment of decision. That presence matters psychologically. A truth fixed elsewhere may be respected. A truth that can travel with you begins to feel dependable. The object becomes less like a distant source of knowledge and more like a companion to action. That is an important shift. Because human beings often trust what is present, operable, and repeatedly consulted more deeply than what remains remote. Portability intensifies trust through recurrence of use. Every repeated consultation strengthens the relationship between user and system. That is why portable interfaces become so central across history. They do not only store order, they create habits of reliance. And reliance is one of the deepest roots of trust. This is why the portable model of the cosmos deserves to be seen as one of civilization's great turning points. It reveals that human beings were no longer satisfied simply to notice order, diagram order, or teach order. They wanted to carry it into movement, carry it into uncertainty, carry it into the changing conditions of life. That is a different level of intimacy with reality. A civilization that can carry a model of order begins living differently inside the world. The sky remains above, but now enough of its structure is near at hand that action itself begins to change. That is the threshold the next part of the story has to cross. Because once cosmic order becomes portable, it does not remain only symbolic or contemplative. It begins changing movement. Distance starts feeling different. Routes start becoming more reliable. Reach begins to expand. That is where the portable cosmos becomes worldly power. And that is where the story goes next. If this video made you see the world a little differently, go ahead and smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Let me know down below what should I cover next. I appreciate you all so much. Catch you in the next video. Look closer, see further, decide for yourself.